Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this, the silver anniversary class of the Pro Football Hall of Fame enshrinement ceremonies, now about to take place on the front step of this shrine of pro football. Football's greatest weekend, to all intents and purposes, began here when George Hallis, Jim Thorpe, and others formed the first pro league with Thorpe its first president. Let's now meet this year's class of 7 enshrinees as Pete Elliott, director of the hall, and Stu Welkins, its chairman of the board, give them their official welcome. First to be introduced in alphabetical order is a consensus All-America at Syracuse University, where he eclipsed the rushing records of 4 fabled predecessors, Jim Brown, Ernie Davis, Jim Nance, and Larry Little. In the pros, he continued his devastating running as he led the Miami Dolphins to 2 Super Bowl titles. I give you Larry Sonka. Our next enshrinee honed his skills right here in Stark County, Alliance to be exact. In college, he was an All-America quarterback at Purdue University, then sat for 5 years with the Steelers and Browns before getting his big chance with the new American Football League, where he led the Kansas City Chiefs into 2 Super Bowls, number 1 and 4, the latter a victory over the Minnesota Vikings. Here's Lenny Dawson. Now comes a defensive tackle from little-known North Texas State, who brand-new head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers, Chuck Noll, selected as his first draft choice in 1969. Pittsburgh fans were unhappy, but not for long, because Noll's pick turned out to be the leader of the fabulous steel curtain defense of 4 Super Bowl champions. Here's Joe Green. Another Steeler is our next Hall of Famer, but from an earlier vintage. A college star of Arizona State, he played 3 years each with the 49ers and Detroit Lions before hitting his best years with the Steelers from 1960 through 1965. I give you John Henry Johnson. Here now is a 6'2", 253-pound center with the Miami Dolphins in their vintage years, a man who played every offensive down in Miami's perfect 1972 season. He played in 141 consecutive games and in Super Bowls 6, 7, and 8. South Dakota State was his school, but his home now is the Hall of Fame. I give you Jim Langer. A graduate of Texas Western, this enshrinee has been named to the all-time AFL team and was a big factor in the New York Jets' upset of the Baltimore Colts in Super Bowl III. This enshrinee also played for the New York Giants, New York Titans, and the St. Louis Cardinals. Let's meet Don Maynard. Our next enshrinee is an Oakland Raider of 15 seasons, a team leader and a dedicated competitor. He was All-Pro 3 times and All-AFL and AFC 8 times. A team leader, this 6'5", 255-pound guard was a franchise maker. Now the executive director of the NFL Players Association, please greet Gene Upshaw. Now will you please stand and join with Rocco Scotty in the singing of our national anthem. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming. When the rockets red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave for the land of the free and the home of the brave. Here now to give his official welcome to all our visitors from near and far is His Honor, the Mayor of Canton, Mr. Sam Persis.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. And first, may I welcome the city of Pittsburgh to Canton, Ohio. This is the moment that makes this weekend of the Festival Football Hall of Fame so special. 7 greats of the football gridiron are to be enshrined in these treasured halls this day. And we are all here to share in that special moment with these great men of the football field. Welcome and enjoy yourselves.
Now it's my distinct pleasure to present to you for his words of welcome to our silver anniversary class of enshrinees, the Commissioner of the National Football League, Mr. Pete Rozelle.
This is annually a weekend of nostalgia for us in which we look to the past to honor previous greats. It's particularly appropriate this year, however, because that's just what the National Football League did last month. They honored the pre-59ers who were not covered by pensions, and they sent out the first checks to a maximum class of about 1,000. It's a great thing because these players had done so much to make the National Football League what it is today. People like Hudson, Grange, Bulldog Turner, Nagurski, they were all covered, as well as 41 other Hall of Famers. I think that the past and present players, past and present coaches, ownership, and certainly the fans have something to be grateful for in achieving this pension benefit. And with that note, I'd like to say, let's go on and honor this year's fabulous 7. Thank you.
Don Shula took over the coaching reins of the Miami Dolphins in 1970 and soon created some of the finest teams pro football has ever known. Here to present Larry Sonka, the superstar fullback of those Dolphin teams, is his coach, Don Shula.
Morning.
The trademark of our back-to-back Super Bowl championship teams was very few mistakes in ball control. It was those strengths that enabled us to go 17-0 and 15-2 during our championship seasons. Our offense had the keen ability to keep the ball away from opposing teams with long, time-consuming drives. Most of these drives ended in touchdowns. We very seldom had to settle for the field goal. Behind all this success was Larry Zonka. He was simply the best fullback of his time. On first down, Zonk averaged 4.5 yards a carry. That enabled our offense to get into the good second down situations. When it got tough on third and short, everyone knew number 39 would get the ball. Like Jim Langer, who opened many of the holes for Zonk, Larry played his best in the biggest games. He had 3 straight 1,000-yard rushing seasons in 1971, 72, and 73, as we went to the Super Bowl each of these years. He averaged 6.3 yards per carry and over 100 yards on the ground in 2 of them. Larry was the most valuable player in Super Bowl VIII, gaining 145 yards on 33 carries and scoring 2 touchdowns. Rarely did Larry make a physical or mental error. His strong arms and hands never let go of the football. One of the great statistics of a running back is he only fumbled 21 times in his career. That's 1 every 95 times he got his hands on the football. Either as a rusher or as an occasional pass receiver. What separates Larry from some of the game's other greats is his superior competitive instincts and his love of playing football the old-fashioned way. He was blood and guts, dirt all over him, never leaving the game. In his career, high school, college, and football, he had 12 broken noses. He just recently got it fixed. You'll see how handsome he is when he gets up here. I once called him the modern-day Bronco Nagurski. Zonka was the big back we needed to make our offense go. Some called our offense boring, conservative, predictable, efficient, businesslike. I called it brutally effective. And there is no doubt Zonk had a lot to do with the brutal part of it. A 5-time All-Pro choice, he had the respect of his peers. There was a lot of intelligence and talent on our Super Bowl teams. But I know where the heart was. Number 39, Larry Zonka.
Thank you. You know, they bring us up here alphabetically. That's why I'm first. I tell you what, Mom, I wish Dad would have spelled our name with a Z. I got to tell you one other thing. See, this is a very emotional thing. And these guys behind me, the other 6 inductees, have been giving me pressure all week about setting the pace. So me not being a very emotional guy, I'm going to try to keep it straight, not break down. And I thought I could do it until I spent the week with Nitsky. Ray's a competitor, and he's been working on us psychologically. You know how middle linebackers are. So I'm going to try to stick with it. I have to tell you, I've never been faced with a more monumental task, worked harder at preparation, and felt more ill-prepared. This moment absolutely has to go to thanks to the people that had to do with me getting here. I kind of broke those down into categories.
And the people I'd like to name, and really only have time to name most of them, are some of the coaches and the personal friends that have been involved with me through my life and my career in football. I thought I'd start with the coaches going back to high school. The first one I encountered was Sam Estock at 100 pounds in junior high school. He was a high school coach and noticed that I looked like I might be able to play and suggested that I go out. I went out and was coached by a fellow named Jim Tyree, who was a wrestling coach, and taught me about the meaning of conditioning. Some of the other coaches were Walker, Fortner, Blake, Eberly, Sloop, and Saldus, and finally Coach Vogt. That had a lot to do with me going to Syracuse, and I want to thank him for that. Coach Fortner came to us in my sophomore year and moved me to fullback in my junior year, and he helped me make a very large decision early in my career. We all fell out for the grass drill the first day of practice, an August day much like this, and he was hollering the downs and ups. We happened to be up at the time when a red convertible went by the practice field, honked its horn. It was a friend of mine. He had two long-haired blondes in it and waved very broadly. And at that, Coach Fortner looked at it and said, "Fellas, there it is. You can either be here doing this or there doing that. Now hit the dirt," and everybody did except me. I had to think about it for a moment. Fortner, like Shula, didn't hesitate, didn't lose the momentum of the moment. He said, "Down, Zonka," and naturally I went down and stayed with it ever after. The other coach out of that group that I'd like to make mention of is a fellow named Larry Saldus. He was an instructor in my junior high school. He coached many teams, but was a referee when I came along. And one day when I was out for junior high football and particularly dejected because we had just had the tar kicked out of us by a little older team, a stronger team, I walked off the field in a fit of depression and really thought about just turning in the helmet. At that point, Mr. Saldus walked up, put his hand on my shoulder and said, "Stick with it, kid. You were the only player on the field today." It made me feel a lot better, and I need to thank him.
My college coaches, Shree, Rocky Piro, Joe Zombathy, Coach Bell, and Ben Schwartzwalder. I'll be forever indebted to Ben Schwartzwalder for realizing that I was a tackle, but he needed a blocking back for Floyd Little, so he put me in there. And Floyd, getting tired a couple of times, permitted me to get my hands on the ball, and being a real hunky at heart, I made it count. I know Pittsburgh will like that. When I got into the pros, I was coached by Coach Wilson, Monty Clark, Coach Schnellenberger, Arnsbarger, Keene, Tassif, McVeigh, Sandusky, and finally Coach Shula. The impact that Coach Shula and the Dolphins had on my life, I think I can reflect to you. On my life and my family, I can reflect to you in a couple of stories. I have two sons that are out before me now. The older boy is Doug. The older young man is Doug. At the ripe old age of 4, when the Dolphins were first coming on, I had him down in the living room tickling him. He demanded that I stop, and I inquired what he planned to do if I didn't, and he stood up before me, held up his little 4-year-old finger, and said, "I'll tell John Shula if you don't." A couple of years later, my younger son, Paul, while standing in front of the TV with a Labrador puppy and wrestling around, stood up to listen to the Star-Spangled Banner of the beginning of a Philadelphia Eagles and a San Francisco 49ers game, listened to the entire thing, and turned around and looked at me with a puzzled look and said, "Daddy, why are they playing the Dolphin song for them?" This time I'd like to thank the Dolphin owner, Joe Robbie, for having a franchise and giving me an opportunity. The Giants owner, Wellington Mara, for the same thing. Two other men that had a great deal to do with my short and lively career: Bob Lundy, our trainer, who put me back together many, many times, and equipment man Dan Dow for designing all kinds of new and light equipment for a fat old fullback. And last but not least, a special group of friends and family. My family, and here's where it gets tough. To all of you, thank you. It's been a long and costly road, but we're here. I love you, Mom. Just please don't call me Gooch in front of these people, all right? To my friends and fellow players, Jim and Mary Kick, who are in the audience, I love you both very much. His in-laws, the Marshalls, his parents, George Kick and Alice Kick, my other set of parents, thank you for all the help. And finally, that wonderful offensive unit that became my friends and family, if you will. Starting with Jim and Kuchenberg and Langer and Little and Morris and Evans and Wayne Moore and Doug Cruzan, Bob Greasy, Paul Warfield, Howard Twilley, Jim Mandage, Fleming, and the whole group. Thanks for letting me be a part of your gang. And finally, Earl Morrill, for being about the most inspirational guy I've ever been around. He's a great man, a great quarterback, and he liked me to run the ball. And he couldn't ask for much more than that. Finally, a thanks to my hometown, Stowe, Ohio. Just a few short miles away, my junior year in high school, when the announcement was made that the Hall of Fame was going to be here and linked with the National Football League the way it's been, was a great thing. We Ohioans had great pride in the fact that it was here. This part of the country, this Midwest area of the country, is where great football is produced. And the young men that play the game come from here to make it great, in my opinion. We've always had a lot of pride about that, so it's particularly pleasant for me to come back after feeling that pride and finally make it. Last but not least, you may win yet, Nitschke. I want to thank a little brown-haired girl named Thank you, Pam. I love you. Thank you very much.
Hank Stram brought Len Dawson into the American Football League in 1962, and for the next 15 seasons, the Stram-Dawson team provided the Kansas City Chiefs with their finest seasons. Here to present Len Dawson is his longtime coach, Hank Stram.
Thank you very much. You know, I first met Lenny Dawson 35 years ago when I was a baseball coach and assistant football coach at Purdue University. Lenny was a senior at Alliance High School, just 20 miles from this Hall of Fame. He was an all-state quarterback, an all-state basketball player, baseball player, and an excellent student. Lenny was shy and he was quiet, but had an air of confidence and poise that was very, very contagious. He was also very unpredictable, because you never knew what his play selection would be or how he would respond to a very simple question. To illustrate this point, he visited our campus and saw our highlight passing reel. After seeing the film, guess what he said? "Didn't your quarterback ever throw an incompleted forward pass?" 2 years later, Lenny was a sophomore. We opened the season against Missouri, and one of our coaches said, "Lenny, good luck in your first collegiate game for Purdue University." Lenny replied, "Thank you, Coach, but you don't need luck. All you need is ability." And he proceeded to throw 4 touchdown passes and led us to a 30-0 upset over Missouri. The following week, he threw 4 more touchdown passes against Notre Dame in a game that we won 28-14. He went on to be our captain, led the Big Ten in passing and total offense for 3 consecutive years, and was an All-American his senior year. Lenny was the #1 draft choice of the Pittsburgh Steelers in 1957. But after 3 years, he was traded
to the Cleveland Browns. He played in the National Football League for 5 years and only threw 45 passes. In 1962, I met Lenny in Pittsburgh with our dear friend Joe Littman. We discussed the possibility of Lenny playing with our team, the Dallas Texans, of the American Football League. He liked the idea and went to Paul Brown and asked if he could be put on waivers so he could play for our team. Paul was kind enough to oblige. Lenny joined our team and won the starting job. He led us to an AFL championship, was Rookie of the Year, Most Valuable Player, and made the All-AFL team. His acquisition was really the turning point of our franchise. When I think of Lenny, I think of family, because I knew Lenny before I had a family. And my wife Phyllis has often said that I spent more time with him than I did with our own family of 6. And you know, she's probably right. When I think of Lenny, I also think of honor. I think of class. I think of style. I think of grace. And I think of dignity. When I think of Lenny, I think of winning, because he played a dominant role in helping us become the winningest team in the history of the American League. We won 4 championships, a Super Bowl, in every big game there was to win in professional football. When I think of Lenny, I think of leadership, because he was a natural leader and was captain of his Alliance High School team, Purdue, the Dallas Texans, and the Kansas City Chiefs. He led by example, and the bigger the game, the better he played. He was our man of the moment. When I think of Lenny, I think of consistency. He was always the same. He never let you see him sweat. That's why his teammates called him Lenny the Cool. And he completed more than 57% of his passes over a 19-year span of time. That's hard to do in a pregame warm-up. Greatness is measured by the test of time, and Lenny passed that test with flying colors. I am very proud and honored to have this opportunity to introduce Lenny Dawson into Pro Football's Hall of Fame. Lenny, your lovely wife, Linda, little Lenny, Lisa, your family, Lamar, all the Chiefs, all of Kansas City, Alliance, your many fans around the country, and every person who ever had anything to do with the American Football League swell with pride over the honor that is yours today. Thank you very much.
Wow. Thank you very much. Coach, I think we're going to destroy the very first statement you said about Lenny does not sweat, because believe me, even though it is warm out here, I am, the quarterbacks call it perspiring. Other people would call it sweat. This is something. Somebody's been asking me all week, well, how do you feel? How will you feel when you get in front of the microphones to address the people? And I actually did not know. They said, what do you want to say? Well, there are some points that I want to make, but I said if I could do it, if I could spit it out. Bobby Mitchell told me the very first time he saw me in Hawaii and it was announced that I was going to be inducted, he said, Lenny the Cool, I am going to watch you melt. He said, no matter how hard you try, it's just, you can't help it. You know, it's interesting, isn't it? Fawcett Stadium. For me, this is where it all began. To complete cycle. But you don't get up here by yourself. You don't do it alone. You need an awful lot of help. And I have been very, very fortunate. I am the 7th son of a 7th son. And all my life they've said, hey, that's great. That's good luck. Well, I am here to attest that that is definitely very, very fortunate. But as I said, you can't do it without people. And I start, Larry was talking about his coaches. I go back to my original coach was my family. and the closeness of my family, my brothers and sisters, and how they worked with me as a youngster to get me interested in sports, teaching me the values of sports and what it can do. My two older brothers worked with me when I was 9 or 10 years old. They taught me things that lasted me throughout my entire athletic career. They took an interest in me. Going on to high school, of course, you know I'm from Alliance, Ohio, down the road, and Mel Knowlton started me on my way to becoming a football player, an accomplished one, because he taught me the fundamentals necessary to play the game. And I'll be forever grateful for Mel Knowlton. At Purdue University, with Stu Holcomb, Jack Molenkoff, Hank Stram, I was fortunate there to be surrounded by great coaches. I don't know of anybody else who's had that opportunity. With Pittsburgh, it was Buddy Parker. With Cleveland, it was a great Paul Brown. So I've been surrounded by people, and they have helped me along the way. But then there was a league that came about called the American Football League. In 1961, I had completed 5 years in the National Football League, and that's about the time they started building the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Now, I'm sure if anybody would have asked at that time, don't you think Len Dawson might one day be here? After they got up off the floor from laughing, they said, why should he be? What has he done? But I'm the seventh son of the seventh son. Things happened to me. A man in Dallas, Texas, by the name of Lamar Hunt, had a dream. He wanted to be involved in professional football. He formed the American Football League. And he had the good sense to hire Hank Stram as the coach. Hank Stram knew me at Purdue. As he said, he recruited me out of Alliance High School to attend Purdue University. And that was my saving grace. Because to tell you the truth, I was awful after 5 years of not playing. The skills that I once had eroded. Had it not been for Hank Stram and knowing me, there would not have been a second look for this seventh son of a seventh son. He stayed with me. He felt that there was something there. And fortunately, I was able to get over the rustiness. But you know what else he did? He surrounded me with great players. Great players. I know some of them are here today. 2 of them sit behind me. They're enshrined in this hall, Bobby Bell and Willie Lanier. Thank you. Jan Stennard and Otis Taylor, I know that they're here also today. As I said at the beginning, you cannot do it alone. You have to have a great deal of help. And I had the help all the way along the line. As I said, it's full cycle for me. 35 years ago, 37 years ago, playing against Canton McKinley High School at Fawcett Stadium as a young sophomore from Alliance, Ohio. This week has been so special. The treatment that we have received here in Canton, Ohio has been nothing but the very, very best. The people have been tremendous in helping us to do whatever that we possibly can to get over what is a very nervous feeling right now. The people of Canton are great, but you know something? I have always known that because this is where I grew up. The people of Kansas City, for those of you who don't know those folks, is some kind of town. The people of Kansas City are tremendous. They have been tremendous to me and my family and to the Kansas City Chiefs. I am very proud to be here. This has been the greatest week of my life. Thank you very much.
When Chuck Noll became the Pittsburgh Steelers head coach in 1969, Joe Green was his first ever draft choice. Within a few years, the Steelers became Super Bowl champions, and Green developed into one of the leaders of the team. To present Joe Green is his coach, Chuck Noll.
You know, Pittsburgh is billed as someplace special, and there's no question about that. I think I found out today, though, that Canton can be classified as something special, and this day, there's no question, is something special. And for the Pittsburgh Steelers, the 1970s were something special. I think it started with a new stadium that kind of changed the atmosphere in Pittsburgh. We went from a little place out in South Park that was not very comfortable to a glamorous stadium and playing against or in front of people who were very, very enthusiastic, and it turned into really something special. Fans got involved. There was a thing called the Terrible Towel, which was excellent. But what it all comes down to, you know, to win 4 Super Bowls, 2 back to back, you don't do that with bricks and steel. You don't really do it with towels. You do it with people. And it's my pleasure to offer here a guy who is really something special, and Joe Green. You know, as I look at all the enshrinees here, there's no question that they are very physical people. They have played the game physically. They are quick, they're strong, they do all the things well. But the thing I think that sets Joe aside from everybody is attitude. It's something that you don't do anything to get, you have, and you have it deep down in. And he had all kinds of attitudes. Probably the best, he wanted to play the game very badly. Before his senior year, I was scouting. I was with the Baltimore Colts at the time, and went through North Texas State, and I had a chance to watch Joe for 3 years, and the last time I got a chance to talk with him, and there was no question, this just came through the man, that he wanted professional football, that professional football was a very important thing to him, and that's a prime ingredient. And one of the other ones is, you know, he didn't like to lose. And Joe didn't come to us really fully prepared. I say this, when he came into the Steeler organization, he hadn't experienced a 1-in-13 year, and we gave it to him that first year. And I think that kind of even brought out some of that good attitude that I was talking about, that desire to win even more strongly. Joe could best be classified as a winner. He was a guy with the great physical abilities, the ability to come off the ball fast, the ability to play low, the ability to play every play to the end. But Joe was one of those guys, great football players, that had antenna out and was really sensitive to the people around him. And as a result, I think we played together as a football team, and regardless of what some of the sportscasters may say when they start adding up guards and tackles and get sums, you win as a team, and you function as a team usually greater than that. And Joe was very much a factor. And it is a pleasure for me to introduce Joe Green.
I love it. This is the big event. You know, I'm not going to pretend that I'm not emotional. I might get emotional about this. The guys that preceded me handled it very well, so they made it tough for me. But I'm going to give it a go. First of all, I'd like to express my appreciation to the Commissioner, Peter Rozelle, and all of the other National Football League owners for making the game what it is today and what it was when I played. I loved it. I want to talk about some of those people that impacted my life over the course of, say, 18 years, 20 years. And when I reflect back, I have to start thinking about high school, thinking about my high school coaches, Coach Elliott, Coach Moore. See, I was the big guy around, but my heart wasn't as big as my body. And I didn't really want to play football, but they made me come out and play football. I want to thank them for not letting me quit when the weather got hot, the sprints got hard, the hits got devastating. I think they made me a tougher person. I also like to talk about my college coaches. Coach McCain, who recruited me from Temple, Texas. Coach Mitchell, who gave me a scholarship. You see, when I first walked in, I didn't have a lot of offers. And I was really trying to get a scholarship. And I had learned kind of early that you have to make an impression. So when this guy that was responsible for giving me this scholarship, I wanted to make sure that he was impressed. So I never did like to work out. But I spent a couple of weeks working with the barbells and trying to get my body looking good. And when I walked into his room, I had some cut-off shorts and I had a sweatshirt on, cut off from the sleeves, and I had just pumped up. And I walked in and I tiptoed and I kind of braced a little bit, and he said, "You got it." You know, there is always mother. Mother. You know, she taught me how to love, how to have respect for other people. She also taught me that to turn the other cheek. Fortunately for me, I learned at an early age you only have one. My wife, Agnes, for supporting me all of those years when I wasn't acting my age, for lifting my spirits when they were very low, for easing the pain that we all feel in this sport, and then finally for letting you know that you're not superhuman, that you're no superstar, you're just the husband. You got to wash the dishes, pick up the clothes, and do all that other stuff. My kids, Major, Delon, Jokel, they gave me a stronger sense of responsibility. See, I'm glad they came along at the time that they did, because I wanted them to love and respect my sport like I do, to understand what it means to see these people back here. This is my business. I want them to know about Paul Warfield, Gail Sayers, Jim Brown. I want them to know about those people, Gino Marchetti, Deacon, Mr. Donovan. I want them to know about him. Respect it. Mr. Bednarik, 14 seasons, offense and defense, football. I want to express thanks to my friends from Dallas, my relatives from Dallas, my friends from Denver, my very dear friends from Churchill, and good friends in the North Hills, Pittsburgh. See, when you win and you don't have anyone to share it with, why win? You have to have someone to share those things with. And they were there for all the Super Bowls and all the big victories. They made it worthwhile. In my exuberance, I forgot about a coach back in North Texas, my defensive line coach, who really let me know that football could be fun. Coach Farrell, my defensive line coach. And there's Mr. Rooney. The chief. No one can make you feel more welcome than the chief. Have a cigar, my boy. You know, I still have the first one that he gave me the day I signed my contract there at the Roosevelt Hotel. May not smoke very good, but it sure does look good. He gave the organization the dignity and the class that it possesses. Dan Rooney, who's been as much of a friend as an employer, always took the time to say hello and pass along a little wisdom. For a young man that kind of bounced on the boundaries as I was, that was very helpful to me. Joe Gordon. And there's a guy that's been with me for a long time. He helped me get through press conferences, what to say with the media and things like that, and that's important for an impressionable young person. So Joe, thank you. George Perlis. Now George was the kind of guy that you knew he couldn't play by looking at him. He knew he couldn't play, but every time he gave a pregame speech and prepared us for the game, you knew he wanted to be out there and play with us. I want to thank George for opening up the game for me, to let me look inside and what it is we're trying to do. Why do I have to be here? So I don't think that if George Perlis hadn't been the kind of coach he was, quite possibly I wouldn't be having as much fun as I'm having now, being the defensive line coach for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I certainly do want to thank Dan Radakovich for having the good sense to put L.C. Greenwood in the lineup in 1970. Because without Holly Baggs, Joe may not be here. L.C. Quick, fast, and did everything that you had asked him to do. I leaned on him a lot because I was just big. He was quick, so I used his legs. Thank you, LC. You know, this is the tough part for me here. These guys means they're something special. Fats. So they're going to always be that to me. They're frozen in time. I can keep them there. Fats. Mad Dog. Killer. Banny. Bernie, Captain Andy, the old Ranger. There's Wags and Mr. T. That's the way I see them. Lammy. The Hammer. There's Donnie and Lauren. And then there's Soup. Soup, my roommate, got a lot of strength from him. Little country boy from Georgia, had a lot of heart, a lot of character. Thank you, Mel. And then there's, you move over to offense and you got Bubba Brown, you got the Mooner, you got Brad, you got the Big Hummer, you got Swanee, you got Stahl. These are my boys here. You got Rocky and Randy, Kobe, Webby. Do you know who these guys are? And then there is the 12th man. See, you always need the 12th man. In Pittsburgh, if you're not at the stadium at 1 o'clock on Sunday in the fall, you're in the wrong place. Pittsburgh. They're always there, but I remember them. I remember them most vividly in the third quarter when L.A. was getting into us pretty good. On key. That's right, defense, defense. Lambert made the interception. Bradshaw got his hands on the ball and immediately got it to Stallworth on one of the greatest plays, I think, in Super Bowl history. Without the fans, it's something different. And we certainly appreciate you and love you for that. And you have impacted my life because you are important. Basically, what the Hall means to me, coming in with Jim, Larry, and Lenny, and John Henry, and Don, and Uppy, that's where I want to be. See, I'm basically a fan at heart, and these people I admire because they stood the test of time. When it got tough, they showed up to play. They made the contest worth watching because they rose to a new height. I'm glad I'm here because this is the big event, and I love it. Thank you.
John Henry Johnson enjoyed the finest years of his long career with the Pittsburgh Steelers in the early 1960s. The Steelers chairman of the board, Hall of Famer Art Rooney, is Johnson's presenter. Here's the Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to congratulate the enshrinees going into the Hall of Fame today. It's a special tribute to three of them, Lenny Dawson and John Henry Johnson and Joe Green, played for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I would like to congratulate all of the former inductees. They have all been great men and great players and have done much for the National Football League. I'm grateful to John Henry Johnson that he chose me as his receptor. That is quite an honor, one that I certainly will cherish all my life. John, as a rookie, joined the great backfield of the San Francisco 49ers of Y.A. Tittle and Joe Perry and Hugh McElhaney, who preceded John into the Hall of Fame. And it's a great honor for John and wonderful for the people that chose John to go into the Hall of Fame, because he certainly deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. John was a full football player. He was recognized by all as one of the all-time great blockers in football. However, John was a full football player. When he retired from the National League, he was the fourth leading rusher in the history of the National Football League, gaining over 6,800 yards. So I again would like to thank John for choosing me as his receptor, and I present to you a real full National Football League, one of the greatest fullbacks in the history of our league, John Henry Johnson.
Before I get started, I have a confession to make. I don't think I was been this scared since I was being chased by Bob Gaines and Don Colo. Anyway, it's been a long wait, but I think it was worth it. I think it takes a little time to accept the fact that you've finally been selected to the Hall of Fame after waiting so many years. There's no man that worked any hard on my behalf than Mr. Rooney and the Rooney family. I'd like to thank him for the hard work and the effort that he put in there. I'd like to also thank Chuck Heaton of the Cleveland Press for doing a yeoman's job of working on my behalf. Let's talk about football for a few minutes. When you think about it, millions of kids start playing football, and at the same time, they dream about being here. But only a few actually make it. Being selected by the Old Times Committee, you might think that that was some kind of a consolation gesture. I don't look at it that way. I'm proud to be picked as an old-timer. After all, it was the old-timers like Bobby Lane, Marilyn Motley, Lipscomb, Perry, and Till who made pro football the game that it is today. There were a lot of people in my life who deserve as much credit for me being here as I do. They were old-timers too, but the lesson they taught me can only be learned and come from experienced people who have been around for a while. There were my junior high school and high school coaches, Tom Curitan and Tony Knapp. You know, it's a funny thing. My career started and ended in Pittsburgh, which is 3,000 miles apart. Back in Pittsburgh, California, my high school coach, Tom Curtin, was a confidence builder. He gave me a lot of chances to play ball. He gave me the idea that I could accomplish a lot of things in sport if I wanted to, and if I worked. That was the secret, if I worked. Mr. Curtin was a stern disciplinarian, but he was the first coach that thought I had enough talent to be a decathlon man. Coach Knapp was the same type. He was a stern disciplinarian, and he gave me a lot of confidence. He told me I could accomplish anything I wanted if I worked hard. He gave me a lot of good reference to colleges, and I ended up going to Arizona State and St. Mary's College. I'd like to thank those two schools for helping me out and giving me the development that they did. Both men emphasized grades, hard work, and being part of a team, and that would take you a long, long ways. I'd like to say something about the principal I had in high school, Mr. Spear, and some of the teachers I had back in Pittsburgh High School. They were dedicated teachers. They really helped me to build my confidence. I think what we need today is for those people to think more about the people around them in high school, the teachers and the coaches. Listen to what they're telling you, not only about keeping your grades up, but about staying away from drugs and the importance of hard work. People make it to the Hall of Fame because they take their God-given talents, add them to what they have been taught by people with experience, the old-timers. They're the ones who knows what it takes. Pete Costanza, Dorothy, his wife, have been my friends and counselors for many years, all the way through high school and junior high school. And can you believe they're still doing it? My mother died when I was real young, and I lived with a brother and my sister-in-law all of my young life, Mr. and Mrs. Melvin Simpson. They taught me appreciation and how to share. When I started playing pro football, I learned from the old timers that you had to play hurt sometimes without complaining. In those days, we went both ways. Some of the greatest players of all time taught me these lessons. Bobby Lane was one of the greatest competitors I've ever saw. He taught me what it meant to win. Bobby did not believe in losing. If we were playing pitching to the line, he wanted to win it. I owe a lot to him and to his widow, Sue, and to his two sons. They were my dear friends. I think Bobby Lane liked me because I had the same attitude he had. We played hard all the time. We didn't want to lose. We didn't ask any questions, and we didn't give any. I played in the famous Dream backfield when I started out with the San Francisco 49ers. Joe Perry, Hugh McElhaney, and Wyatt Tilley. I learned teamwork from those fellas. We were good because we worked together as a team. To them, a good blocker was just as important as a good runner. I know because I did a lot of blocking for those guys, and it made me feel real good. My greatest moment in pro football was winning the championship in Detroit. The season taught me never to quit and never to say die. We were behind in many, many occasions, but we came back to win. Bobby Lane said on all those games that we will win it, and believe me or not, we won. Old timers were driven by pride and not dollar signs. They looked at fame as something. Thank you. They looked at fame as something to be earned by performers and not from press clippings. After I left pro football, when all these values really started to mean a lot to me. Working hard, never giving up, having confidence. This is what kept me going. I was confident someday I would be here. But then on the other hand, I thought I might be dead since it's taking so long. Okay. I'm real proud that I've earned your respect. Early this year, when more pension money was provided for the old timers, I think it was a good thing. It was a long time coming. But each one of them deserve all the help you can give them. They deserve all your respect that you can give them. They earned it. They really earned it. I'd like to say hello to another family of mine out here, Peggy and Jack Southern, who I spent many happy years with, and who really gave me a lot to use. I got a family out here, my brothers, got 2 daughters and a wife. I got a brother-in-law back there, his lovely family, Barbara and John L. I want to thank all of you. I got Leona's out there someplace. I don't see her. Oh, that's you. I'd like to thank all you all for all the support you're giving me. And in many cases, it's been real tough to make it without it. I want to say that respect is all I ever wanted. And today, I feel that I finally have that respect. I want to tell you that it makes me feel damn good. If I left out anyone, I hope you forgive me. Like I said, I'm a little nervous, so I want to say thank you.
Jim Langer was another of the superstars who excelled for the Miami Dolphins in the 1970s. Here to make his second presentation today is Langer's coach, Don Shula.
Double duty. What a pleasure. In order to win on offense, you have to be strong up the middle. Our Dolphin teams of the 70s had that strength with Bob Greasy at quarterback, Larry Zonka at fullback, and Jim Langer at center. Jim was the anchor of our great offensive line. He was the combination of his skills and leadership that enabled us to play exceptional ball control football. Jim made it the hard way. In 1970, he was signed as a free agent by the Cleveland Browns out of South Dakota State, and then was released on the last cut. My offensive line coach, Monty Clark, knew of Jim's potential, and he talked me into picking him up off waivers. Monty's here today, and I'm sure that he's very proud. Monty? Jim made our active roster in 1971, and in 1972 he won the starting job. He held on to that spot until 1979 when a knee injury cut short his playing career. Jim was not only a 6-time All-Pro performer, he was durable. He played in 134 straight games during his career and holds a Dolphin team record of 117 consecutive starting assignments. In our perfect season of 1972, he played every down. One of the amazing statistics after that year in grading out his blocking, out of 500 blocking assignments, he needed help on only 3 plays to get the job done. He was a guy that you could rely on to do it one-on-one. Our offensive line during the back-to-back Super Bowl years made very few mental or physical errors, and Jim was the leader up front. He called all the blocking assignments and used his tremendous strength and quickness to become not only a power drive blocker on rushing plays, but also an excellent pass protector. Jim had a way of playing his best against the best in the biggest games. He always rose to the occasion. Having Jim as a player and being able to coach him was a distinct pleasure. Being here to present him to you today for induction into the Hall of Fame is an honor. It's a tribute that one of pro football's greatest centers should enter the Hall during his first year of eligibility. He got it done within the rules. He had very few holding calls and was the solid cornerstone of the great Dolphin teams of the 70s. He was our leader. I'd like to present Jim Langer.
Thank you, Don. In case any of you are wondering what it's like on a football stadium floor when it's 140 degrees, you've been sitting in it. And the skilled positions have used up a lot of our time, so Upshaw and I are going to try and get this thing back on track. And if you think I'm nervous, I'm scared to death. In the fall of 1970, I began a career at Hiram College, where the Cleveland Browns had training camp. Began with a lot of uncertainty and certainly with a lot of humility. It's about 17 years since then, and my career has ended. I'm certainly certain of a lot more things now, but I have more humility approaching this moment than I had coming into the league. This is a tremendous thing to have happen to an individual. And a lot of people ask me, how did the Dolphins accomplish what they did? And how did they tick? And I'd like to read you one sentence before I mention a few people that made it all possible, and then I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Maynard. This is Don Shula talking in the early 70s, and I quote, "I feel you set a goal to be the best, and then you work every waking hour of every day trying to achieve that goal. The ultimate goal is victory. And if you refuse to work as hard as you possibly can toward that aim, then you are just cheating yourself." What we want to dedicate ourselves to is establishing a standard of excellence in the future, just as the Packers did in the past. That is the challenge. And ladies and gentlemen, we believe that to a man for all the time I spent in Miami. I played with a group of guys Monty Clark called the Mushrooms. Monty Clark means more to me in many ways than I can express up here. He was followed by John Sandusky. But guys like Wayne Moore, Larry Little, Norm Evans, Mike Curran, Ed Newman, and my roommate of 9 years, Bob Kuchenberg, who, Kuch, you better get ready. That is what this game is all about. And as I sat at a luncheon with the likes of Hugh McElhaney and Night Train Lane and Gale Sayers and Ray Nitschke, it has still not occurred to me what's happening at this point, but it will. And what I feel most thankful for is my family is here to enjoy this with me. My mom is here, who's tougher emotionally than probably even Joe Green. In fact, she threatened him just the other day. And my wife of 19 years, who used to go out in the backyard and catch snaps for me, trying to convince Don that I may make a snapper at some point. Lynn put in some tough years. As was expressed by Joe, it's a tough life, it's a tough on a family. And to my children who are seeing not only this happening in my case, but to the great individuals that have been enshrined here with me today and with the people that have preceded us in the past. And to countless people we don't have time to mention, You know who you are, and you mean so very much to me. You don't get to this podium by yourself. I've been very, very fortunate throughout my career, and I will cherish this moment for the rest of my life. Thank you very much.
During their playing days with the New York Jets, Joe Namath and Don Maynard teamed up to give the Jets one of history's greatest passing-receiving combinations. Here to present Don Maynard for enshrinement is his Hall of Fame teammate, quarterback Joe Namath.
Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. You youngsters out there, too. The man I'm about to introduce to you is from Texas, the old Texas Flash. Don Maynard went to West Texas State, or actually Texas El Paso, and after finishing college, he was drafted by the New York Giants in 1958. Now, Don will tell you, he was the first one to make cowboy boots and sideburns fashionable in New York. However, not everyone in New York liked cowboy boots and sideburns, especially with the Giants. You see, they weren't too keen on those things. It seems silly now, but back in 1959, many football people felt that that was the reason that the Giants allowed Don Maynard to leave their camp and go on up to Canada for 1 year. Well, after spending 1 year in Canadian football, Don came back. He was the very first draft choice of the New York entry to the American Football League, Harry Wismer's New York Titans. Don was the very first player signed by the New York Titans. Now, Don was a great player. He made many of his teammates better football players, and Don worked with 25 different quarterbacks throughout his career, and he made most of us better football players. I'll tell you about 2 games, about 4 plays that stand out in my mind. We happened to be playing against the same football team, a very good football team. They still are to this day. They were a tough rival of ours, even though they were all the way out in California, the Oakland Raiders. Nice bunch of guys, you know what I mean? Very tough football team. Well, we're backed up on our own 1-yard line, but Don had this wonderful knack of being able to go after the football, be able to leap at it and get it at its highest point. Even though we were on our own 1-yard line, I called a go pattern, decided to go ahead and throw the bomb. Well, I did. I threw it, just laid it out there, having all the confidence in the world in Don to be able to come down with the football. Well, he did it. 51-yard gain, just like that. He came back to the huddle. I said, "Hey, Don, how you feeling?" He said, "Shoot, Joe, I'm just fine." That's the way he talks, you see. I said, "You think you can do it again?" He said, "Hey, you go ahead and lay it on out there. I'll get it." Well, he's right. Here we are on their 49-yard line. Call the same play, another go pattern to Don. I just threw it up in the air. He made the judgment, went up after it, pulled it down, and stepped into the end zone for a touchdown. 2 plays, 99 yards. Yeah, neither one of the passes were good. He made the plays. A little while later, we're playing for the American Football League championship against a very good Oakland Raider team. We had just fallen behind 23-20. I'm sitting on the bench feeling mighty low because old Joe just threw the interception that set up the score. All right, Don comes over to me, leans over, pats me on the shoulder. He said, "Now, take it easy, Joe. Don't get down on yourself. But I tell you what, anytime you want it, I can get a step on that, man. You let me have it." Well, boy, he said that with so much confidence. It made me feel so much better. We went out in that football field. I got in the huddle. I called 2 plays. I told the rest of the team, "Look, Don can get a step. I'm going to call 2 plays. Quick out. If the defense is laying back, we'll go to the out. If not, I want maximum protection for Don to get deep." But the defense was laying back. And why, I'll never know. why Willie Brown ever laid off anybody else. Willie Brown was laying back, hit Sire with a quick out, 10-yard gain. Get back in the huddle. I said, all right. Called another play. I said, be alert now. I may check to the goal. Sure enough, we got up to the line of scrimmage. This defensive back climbed up on Don. Man, it was time. I called the audible, dropped back to throw, and just threw the ball as far as I could, as hard as I could. Don Maynard made one of the greatest catches of all time. If you see it on film or if you have seen it, you'll understand what I'm talking about. He made an over-the-shoulder catch, brought it in one-handed, went out of bounds at the 6-yard line. We had first and goal for the AFL championship. I figured the Raiders were going to count on a running play at that time, so I was going to outsmart them and call a play-action pass. Well, I was wrong. The Raiders were a little smarter than I thought, a lot smarter, actually. I made the fake to Snell, and I looked for George Sire. He was covered. Looked for Bill Mathis. He was covered. Came back to big boy Pete Lammons, our tight end, and he was covered. And about that time, I saw that 13 streaking across the back of the end zone. Boy, I threw that thing as hard as I could, as fast as I could. Was a little off, line down low. Don slid down there and cradled that ball. We went on to the Super Bowl. Y'all know what the history is behind that. Don Maynard, he was the man our opponents worried about, the knockout punch, lightning in a bottle, nitro just waiting to explode. I mean, he could fly, but with the grace of a great thoroughbred. The man could flat play. He galloped through the best of the very best football players in the world. When Don Maynard left professional football after 15 seasons, he left with the most receptions of anyone who had ever played the game professionally, 633 catches. He retired with the most yards ever traveled by a receiver, 11,834. He finished with, and to this very day, still has the second most TB touchdown receptions, 88, behind the immortal Don Hudson. Don's average gain per reception of 18.7 is the third best of all the receivers in this Hall of Fame. Paul Warfield has a 20.1 and Lance Allworth has an 18.9. Now, no one who has ever played the game has as many 100-yard games as Don Maynard. He did it 50 times. 50 times my man did it. 3 of those games, he went over 200 yards. In 1970, when the all-time American Football League was named, Don Maynard's name was right there at the top of the list, a wide receiver, along with Lance Allworth. A wonderful tribute to Don's ability. His number 13 has been loved so many years and missed so many years in New York by the Jets, has been retired. All of us are happy about that back there in New York. Yeah, Don was a great football player. He's also a great guy. When I was just a rookie, Coach Eubank told me, Joe, you're a lucky man. You're going to be working with a great receiver. Once again, Coach Weave Eubank was right on the money. Those of us from the New York Jets, and we have some fellas here from the Jets, who had the honor of working with Don over the years, will never forget the man as a great player and the man as a friend. Ladies and gentlemen, I am honored to introduce to you one of the class people of all time and great football players I've ever been around, Mr. Don Maynard.
Some of you people that know the old New York Titans, that's more applauding one day than I got in about 3 years up there. I see a number 13 up there on that sign. I like that number for some reason. But I'd like to give thanks to the Hall of Fame people, the city of Canton, all the people that had anything to do with this great enshrinement and the honor that I have along with these other guys coming along. I'm the 6th today of the Magnificent 7. Joseph, it's a long way from Beaver Falls, Pennsylvania to Canton, Ohio. But let me tell you, it's longer from Three-Way High School to Canton, Ohio. I started out with the number 13 there, and thank you, Coach Whitfield, for letting me play a little six-man football and teaching me a couple things as a quarterback that no coach has ever taught or shown today. The 13's been real important to me. I got to play with it up at the Giants and then on with the Jets. But I'm sure glad Joseph came along. After playing 25 quarterbacks, I'm sure glad I found one that started listening to what I wanted done. They used to tell me you couldn't round your pattern. I said, well, you got to. How you drive a car down a highway and turn a corner going 50 miles an hour? So I had to round all my stuff. And I said, Joe, when you throw the ball, throw it where I catch it when I turn out. And that's where he did. Matter of fact, I was glad I always wore a helmet because the ball was there. And that's what made him so great also, was his anticipation. But he had four great receivers, Bake Turner, George Sauer, and Pete Lamons. But Joe was unreal, and it was great to work with a guy that if you missed it, you could work it out 20, 30 minutes every day after workout. So as a result, we kind of came along and did pretty good. It's nice to hold a record or two, but after many years, 18 to be exact, to hold a record in the NFL, I was real proud, but a lot of records are just made to be broken. I was fortunate as a rookie to play under Lombardi and Landry, and then under great guys like, or with great guys like Gifford and Rote and Webster and Connolly and Emlyn Tennell, and it's just tremendous the life that I've had to enjoy. And then I moved on to the Titans. Coach Sammy Ball, Bones Taylor, Dick Todd, John Delasolo. Then on to the Jets. Thank you, Mr. Werblin, and your team of owners. And thank you, AFL owners and Harry Wismer. And you, Weave, I tell you, you molded a great bunch of ball players together. We won for you, but we won for ourselves. And thank you, Walt Michaels, and Chuck Knox, and Cleve Rush, and Buddy Rhines, and Jack Donaldson. I gave it my all. I trained the best way I knew how, or I could figure out to play. Thank you, Granddad Sharp. The promise I made to you at age 5 is still going strong. I've never tasted beer or alcohol. Thank you, Uncle Howard Sharp. I'm glad you said run the hurdles instead of sprinting all the time, because sprinters were a dime the dozen. And thank you, Coach Buck Skimper, my high school coach, staying on top of me to play a little football and to run those hurdles. I was fortunate to win the highs and lows in the state of Texas, and I'm sure that helped me a lot in pro ball. And thanks to the great fans from everywhere and all my teammates from high school and especially Colorado City and all the ones that I played with in pro ball. You know, it's really a shame everyone can't experience the great enjoyment of life I've had here and there, especially from the first grade where I rode a mule 6 miles to school to a one-room schoolhouse that had 6 rows, and each row was a grade, and you had one teacher. Yes, it's a long way to Canton, Ohio. Even to New York City. As I look out there, I see more people out there than some of the towns I lived in. I looked up at the first building I saw in New York, and it had more bricks than some of the towns I lived in. Mom and Dad, I wish you could be here today. It's been great. And then there's a guy that I idolized all my life. He never played sports, but he was inspiration to me all the way through. When I was in the Scouts, he was my senior patrol leader, and that's my brother. I had to learn it twice as hard as the next guy just because he wanted me to be my best. And to my sister, Marilyn, she's a class lady. And then my son, as all fathers are, they're proud as can be of their sons. And I'm especially proud of him and hear all the compliments that I do from a couple of places that he's been. And to my wife, Anna, she's a doll, she's a dream. She really Don's queen. My life has been happier the last 14 years since I quit pro ball. I came to play and I came to stay. Football was the game, Country Don was the name. I made a mark and I became a star with a lot of help from near and far. There was good ones and great ones I played with and against. Thank you, good Lord, for that wonderful chance. As I played my part many times, even late after dark, I don't have to look back because I played it with my heart. The direction from where I came resulted in a whole lot of fame. I played the best, and I believe I passed the test. I'm glad this over. I need some rest. God loves you. I love you too.
Back in 1967, Al Davis was the managing general partner of the Oakland Raiders, who predicted great things for his #1 draft choice that year, Gene Upshaw. Al Davis still is the head man at the Raiders, and he's here today to present Gene Upshaw for enshrinement. Mr. Al Davis.
Just when? For 3 memorable decades, the Oakland and now Los Angeles Raiders have had the greatest players, the greatest coaches, the greatest plays, and performed in the greatest games ever played in the annals of professional football as well as sports. During these 3 decades, the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s, the Raiders have the best record in professional football as well as professional sports. Among the greatest players during these decades, the quarterbacks were names like Flores, LaMonica, George Blanda, the greatest clutch player who ever played the game, Stabler, the indefatigable Plunkett. The coaches were the legendary John Madden and the excellent Tom Flores. The Hall of Famers were the indestructible Jim Otto, and the standard for excellence of all cornerbacks, Willie Brown. The Raiders are the only team in professional football who played in the Super Bowl in the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s. And there was one offensive guard, one constant, who started in all 3 decades and is the only player in NFL history who started in the Super Bowl in the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s. His name is Eugene Upshaw. Gene Upshaw came to the Oakland Raiders in 1967 out of Little Texas A&I as a first-round draft choice in the first AFL-NFL draft. He captained the West team in the College All-Star game. Gene, when drafted, was approximately 6'5", 260 pounds, and had never played guard in his life and did not want to play for the Raiders. He thought they were renegades. Today the word is Mavericks. But not only did he start for the Raiders for 15 years because we loved to listen to what the players want, and not only did he start in 200 consecutive league games and played the most league games ever by any Raider player, he played offensive guard, and he was the Raider captain for 9 consecutive seasons. He played in 24 postseason contests, 10 AFC NFL title games, and as I mentioned, 3 Super Bowls. He played in 6 straight Pro Bowls. Gene Upshaw was truly a force in the life and the greatness of the Raiders. I've said this before, that I love to come here to this hall, to walk through its exhibits, to pay tribute to the great men who we idolized and in whose glory we all share. It has always brought back a realization of the debt we owe to each other, and I and the Raiders, for one, shall never forget that debt. This great class and its magnificent presenters bring back memories to me, memory of great games, as if it were only yesterday. They were glorious battles on the gridiron because in the 60s and the 70s, we were continuously challenged. I'll never forget the green and white of the New York Jets in the late 60s, Joe Willie Namath, Don Maynard, and as Joe told, how he hit Maynard for 99 yards in 2 plays and told me about it before we got up here. And I said to him, "Who won the game, Joe?" But I also remember that one play in Shea Stadium in 1968 when Namath in the swirling winds of Shea Stadium hit Maynard with a 59-yard pass that broke the back of the Raiders and propelled the Jets into Super Bowl III. I'll never forget the Big Red of Kansas City, Hank Stram, the impeccable Hank Stram with Len Dawson at the helm. And one play stands out in my mind. In 1979 in Oakland, Dawson at the mouth of the goal hit Otis Taylor for about 50 yards that propelled the Kansas City Chiefs on their way to glory. And of course, in the early 70s, it was Don Shula's Miami Dolphins with Zonka and Langer. And who can ever forget the sea of hands catch in the Oakland Coliseum, stabler to Clarence Davis with approximately 26 seconds left on the clock. And then in the mid-70s, the steel curtain. The black and gold of Chuck Noll's Pittsburgh Steelers with its captain, Joe Green, the immaculate reception, and the vicious struggles in the 70s with the Steelers. These were the greatest games. These were the greatest plays, the greatest coaches, and the greatest players. On this stand today, there's 21 Super Bowls. There were 11 victorious Super Bowls among that group. And the reason I bring it up, because there's one person on that stand who was there for all of it. He was there as a player. Gene Upshaw, you were there. And I take you back to the Oakland Coliseum, and I can hear the roar of the crowd, and the chills go through my body, and I can see those famed silver and black uniforms. Gene Upshaw, I can see you walking to the center of the field to greet the opponent's captain with that famed Highway 63 on your jersey, the white collar, the white tape forearms, that Raider battle-scarred helmet in your hand. You know, the Raiders have always believed that what wins is great players and great organization. Gene Upshaw was the consummate organization player. He wore that Raider uniform with pride. He wore it with poise. He wore it with class. He was a star among stars. But he was a man for all seasons. He was for the thunder and lightning of the awesome battles, but the serenity and wisdom of the council room. A player who, by his deeds and words, over 15 memorable years, dramatized the appreciation of offensive linemen by the media and pro football fans throughout the world. He, with his enormous size, his enormous speed, and his enormous heart, was the prototype guard. He became the standard of excellence by which offensive guards were and will be judged in eternity. In fact, Gene Upshaw is the first player in the history of the National Football League who exclusively played guard ever inducted into the National Football League Hall of Fame. It's a great honor and a privilege, and I offer my respect and remembrance to the Upshaw family. They've been a great part of my life, and certainly it's been an emotional and inspirational experience to be here today. In short, it was ordained from the beginning that Gene Upshaw was born to achieve excellence, honor, to lead, and to achieve eternal enshrinement in our own Valhalla, our own Mount Olympus of legendary heroes, the National Football League Hall of Fame. With great pleasure, I introduce to you Gene Upshaw. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just before I took the few steps it took to get here, John Henry and Joe Green wanted to know how long they were and told me not to be too long. I mean, these guys were up here all day. But this is a tremendous honor for all of us to be enshrined in Pro Football's Hall of Fame. I must say that, like everyone else, you don't get here alone. You don't get here by yourself. You had to have great coaches along the way, parents, family, and we had to have the fans. And all of that was important to us. My parents are here, Cora and Eugene Upshaw. I had a brother, played with the Kansas City Chiefs under Hank Stram, with Lenny Dawson, Willie Lanier, Bobby Bell, Marvin Upshaw, who grew up in high school a lot larger than I was. He still is today, but it's in the wrong places. And he was the guy that sort of pushed me. He was always a little better than I was in football. I never liked football. I didn't like the contact, the hitting, all the violence. I really thought that I would be entering into Pro Baseball's Hall of Fame. But I went to a little small school in Texas A&I. That school was amazing, tremendous school. But before I got to Texas A&I met up with a couple of coaches, Buddy Hamrick, which was my line coach in high school, Melvin Moody, they're both here. They thought I couldn't play football, and they were right. So I didn't get a scholarship once I left A&I. I left Robstown High School. I walked out on the football field at A&I, and Gil Stanky was my college coach, asked me what was I doing on the field. I said, I'm just sort of looking around. He said, get a uniform, come back out, and I did. And I earned a scholarship in 3 days. Went on from A&I to become a #1 draft choice with the Raiders. Now I'll tell you, I had great role models as a young child growing up in Texas. My parents, my high school coaches, my college coach, my brothers, Marvin and Doug Upshaw, were all tremendous people that helped me get this far. But once I got into pro football, taking that first leap into the real world as an adult, away from home, I met the people with the Raiders, the whole family. And we do have a family. We have been classed as renegades, misfits, and mavericks. But we all stick together out there, and we always will. And I met the Raider family. They had some unique individuals. I'll join the class here now of teammates of mine that are already in the Hall of Fame. Willie Brown, Jim Otto, George Blanda. And this is just the beginning for other guys that will come along after Gene Upshaw. We have had a tradition with the Raiders that winning was the most important thing. Winning is all that matters, victory. As Al and I were riding in the parade, he was still saying the old chant, just win, baby. And that's been a part of my life, and it will be in the future. Now, I told those guys I wouldn't take a lot of time, and I won't. Because we have a lot to do, we've covered a lot. I can never thank all of the people that have helped me get here. I can't thank all of the people that's had so much influence on my life. My teammates, there are too many. My friends, the media, the people in the Bay Area, people in Los Angeles, they've been very good to me. It's given me an opportunity to do some things that I never thought was possible. But I had the right upbringing, I had the right discipline. I had what it took because I was afraid to fail. Someone asked me, what was it like to play for Al Davis? What was it like? Can you describe what it was like in 30 seconds? Well, it takes longer than 30 seconds to describe Al Davis. One day he'll take his place in history, like Otto, Blanda, and the other men here. I also have my wife here, Terry, my son, Eugene III, and my 3-month-old son. Even at my age, you can still do it, Justin. And they're a big part of my family, and they help me as we go forward from this day forward. Because you all know, I'm involved in a pretty controversial position as a representative, executive director of the Players in the National Football League. The advancement, the strive that we make as a union will be rooted in my upbringing in Texas, my college career, and the years I spent with the Raiders. We will do the right thing. We will do what's best for the players. We will remember that it takes 3 for the game of football. It takes the players, it takes the owners, and it takes the fans. We have a unique relationship. I love the game of football. I love what it's given me and all of the men that are in the hall. It's the greatest honor that you could ever receive as an individual. And I must say, I will cherish it, but I don't walk in that hall alone. I walk in there with everyone that I've met, everyone that's had a part of my life, everyone that has pushed me when I didn't feel like going. I go into the hall with all of you because you are what make the game of football great. As I take my place in history, hopefully it will be a place that I can always look back and remember this moment, because so many of you have had such a tremendous part of making this a successful career for Gene Upshaw. Thank you very much.